Creativity is king. There's an important distinction between creativity and creative capability. Just let me draw an analogy to that. And if I just talk about performance, for example, if I'm walking down the street with Usain Bolt, who to this day still holds the record as the fastest person in the world. If we're both walking down the street together, 4 miles an hour or whatever, our performance expression is exactly the same. Our performance capability is completely different. He has the capability for profoundly greater importance than I do. Creativity is the expression of creative capability. Creative capability is the machinery that determines how creative we can be.
Today's guest is Neil Moore, an incredible human being that you will just so be inspired by. He is an author, a music educator, a speaker. He was born in Melbourne, Australia in 1957 and moved to the United States in 1994. He's the founder of Simply Music, an international organization that is the world-class leader in playing-based music education. His breakthrough methodology transformed 300 years of music education and its focus on bringing music to the masses. The Simply Music program is taught by a global community of teachers around the world spanning 135 countries, and I get to be one of them. And Neil's massive transformative purpose is to cause a global transformation in music education, to transform access to musical self-expression, and to elevate the creative capability of humanity. I can't wait to welcome Neil Moore.
Stay tuned.
Hey, my name is Kat.
And I'm Lee.
And welcome to the
Wildly Wealthy Life podcast. In this show, we explore the journey of what it means to live a truly exceptional and fulfilling life.
Each episode focuses on how a foundation of brilliant minds and brave hearts nurtured through the arts leads to lifelong success.
Get inspired with actionable tips to foster a growth mindset, leadership values, and creativity in children and adults, turning their potential into lasting contributions for their communities.
We hope that you embrace the challenge to shift your perspective as we equip you and the next generation for a
wildly wealthy life.
We just talked to Neil Moore, and it was an incredible conversation. And we just want to tease our audience a little bit before we bring him in. What are a few main things that was like really standing out to you in that conversation?
Neil is a deep thinker, and I think the best piece that you're going to pull away is just the way to look at life. How things that we sometimes imagine as giant mountains in our life are really just little molehills, as they say. And the elegant way that he describes how to live a wildly wealthy life is amazing.
Yes, I would say this is one of those episodes that I really think you have to listen from beginning to end, and might be worth listening to a second time, a third time, because of just the wealth of experience that Neil has had in his life. There's so much wisdom that he is going to share and nuggets that you are going to just be so inspired by. His life experiences are just amazing. And so stay tuned. We'll bring him in. Make sure you listen all the way through to the end. So Neil, thank you for being here. I would like to start with what has been one of the hardest decision that you've had to make, where you really had to step out in boldness and in courage to kind of, get to that other side of a situation that you were in.
Well, the biggest looking decision that I had to make was deciding that, hey, let's pack up our lives in Australia, a country that we love, with families that we love, and my wife and I and our children, and let's move to the other side of the world to pursue a dream. And people look at that and said that was a really huge decision and a huge risk. And there are a lot of things that ordinarily people would consider to be risky. and it would be considered, the enormity and the weight of that decision would be considered to be very significant. That wasn't my experience of it at all. My experience was I just felt so strongly about this being something that I was called to do. And I've always had extraordinary loyalty from my wife. And so it's like, let's do it, let's go. And so the bigger challenges have been those times when trying to give birth to my organization and bring it to fruition, where there have been enormous financial challenges and wipeouts, and having to really confront things that we thought were going to have a really positive, successful outcome not coming to fruition, and then creating all sorts of logistical issues. And the challenges have been more personal from that point of view. And I run the organization. I don't think I should be running it. I'm not really that good at it, to be honest. And I think at best, I've done an adequate job at keeping the organization alive. What I have contributed most is the methodology that I've created, and what that has contributed. But from the point of view of running the organization, what did I know about building and growing an international organization and managing the logistics of that? And I got into this in the very beginning for the music. I've always felt like I belonged to music, and I got into and created Simply Music for the music. But at some point of time, it became about being in the business of being in business, and running the organization and the logistics and the contracts and the trademarks and the agreements and the licensing and the financial aspects and the recording and the reporting and the paperwork and it just has become this thing, a great deal of which I'm not good at doing and I don't enjoy doing, and there have been times when the demands of just managing the logistics of this organization have been really problematic. But my strength has been, I always get back into the ring. I just pick myself up and I get back into the ring. And so I couldn't nail it down to one particular incident. There's just been lots and lots of those, which is very typical in the entrepreneurial journey. I've had the privilege of being around a lot of really, really successful people that are enjoying all of the, the perceived benefits and trappings of, financial success, as well as life success. And if I were to look at what's consistent amongst all of the people that I know that have successful lives, and that is that this has been one heck of a roller coaster ride, with lots and lots of times where I've looked and thought, is this the hill I'm going to die on? Like, no, I couldn't allow myself to look back and say, this thing that happened, this incident, this event, this thing that didn't turn out, this was the thing that stopped me. This was the thing that where I gave up on what I dreamed,
Can I ask, the tenacity that you have to get yourself back in the ring, the fortitude and the trust you have in yourself, can you think back and remember maybe moments, instances, positions you were put into where you had to make that choice for yourself and for your goals and your dreams and move forward with it? Because a lot of times when there's challenges, sometimes people step back, or they get wounded and they don't really heal and they're not able to move forward. But do you remember from some moments where you just felt that, if I just trust in myself, press into this music thing, that's where my life fuel is going to come from. And then, as we go through life, we do get derailed and we need to get back on. So what would be a methodology or a process for that as well?
Yeah. Well, when I first came here, in the early years, it was very much nose to the grindstone, completely focused on developing content and developing the methodology. And there was a certain point of time where we had an investor come on board, and the strategy that they felt was best suited to where we were at was to take my method, create a self-study program, and market that program nationally, like on an infomercial. So, Simply Music is and has always been a program training teachers how to teach the methodology. And so in this instance, we were going to say, let's actually create a product that we would market directly to the public. And so it became a self-study learn at home program, and we marketed that on an infomercial. And that project was the most extraordinary experience that I had. At that time, our annual revenues were about, $250,000 a year. It was just me teaching and, developing the content. And we launched this in an infomercial format, and we went from doing $250,000 a year to doing $1 million a month overnight, just like
Wow.
that. It was
Mhm.
a ramp up. It just went from night to day instantly. And that created all sorts of breakdowns. And, we looking back on it now, we were just absolutely woefully unprepared to handle what had happened. And we even didn't have access to information and data. All the costing was wrong. We had no idea that every dollar in revenue we were generating, we were incurring $1.40 of costs. And so by the time we got data, we had already accumulated hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. And this thing imploded. Fortunately, through that whole process, I built my organization on relationships and being transparent and full disclosure. And everybody who was involved, the vendors there were all sorts of things involved in, media buying and advertising and shipping and production and duplication and distribution and reporting and accounting and, the marketing. There's just lots and lots of components to doing something like this. Everybody was aware of exactly what was happening and was willing to ride through and support us through that process. And by the time we had data that was meaningful, and we saw the disaster that was on my shoulders, really, we stopped that project and thought, okay, I've got to completely redefine this and redesign this whole thing and go to market again with a more thoroughly thought through structure. And we spent that next 12 months just redefining, redesigning absolutely everything, and we're ready to launch. And the last of the funds we had, we'd invested in this national, television marketing buy, and that was set to launch on September the 13th, 2001, and on September 11th, 2001,
Wow.
um,
Yeah.
September 11th happened.
Yeah.
And my issues and concerns and the impact is nothing compared to what happened to the lives that were lost and the families that were destroyed. But I remember my sister in Australia called me early hours of the morning and said, "Are you watching the TV?" I said, "No." She said, "Turn on the TV." And I turned it on and I saw what had happened. And I just realized that, wow, our lives had just changed. And any hope of us being able to trade out of that debt and rely on the infrastructure, I think I have had about $427,000 of personal debt, but it wasn't so much the number of the debt that was the issue. It was really more, I saw no possibility of how I was going to move forward under the circumstances that I was in. And it was a really confronting experience. I don't want to say it was a dark time for me, but it was a very difficult time emotionally.
Yeah.
And one of the practices that I've developed, which I don't even think I could recommend it to anyone, but it's a practice that has worked for me, is I do something that I call prescribe the symptoms. And what I mean by that is like, oh gosh, is this going to fail? Is this going to implode? Am I going to be able to make it through? And I have found, listen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let myself I'm going to fully experience the weight and the burden and the sadness and the upset. I'm going to stay in bed and pull the doona or the duvet over my head, and I'm just going to give up. And I lay in bed long enough and it's like, what the heck am I doing? This is so boring. And I actually recreate what the experience of giving up would be like. And I also relate to this. Look, not everybody, we all see the world differently, right? We all have different belief systems. And I like to see my life and my journey through the eyes of divine design. So it's a God thing for me. Now, I don't even care whether that's true or not. I get value out of believing it's true, and that's all that matters for me. Faith trumps fact every time. And so for me, I've always thought of, listen, my organization, it comes from the codification of the way that music occurred for me, even before I was aware of my own existence. I've had my relationship with music since infancy, and it was evident since infancy. And I think of it from the point of view of my relationship to music and the opportunity for me to bring that to the world. That was something that was all preordained. I was born with that hardwired into my system. And, there's that old saying that many are called, but few answer the calling.
Right.
I just remind myself that, listen, I have a partner in the divine. I've been asked to do this. I know that every single time I've had something go wrong in my life, at some point in time, 3 months, 6 months, 2 years later, I look back on it and I'm glad that it happened because something else came out as a result. And so I've had that happen enough times where it's like when I get to those stages, it's like I can remind myself, one, I'm doing the work of a higher purpose and a higher calling. Secondly, this is something that makes a contribution to the world, and very few people have the opportunity or materialize the opportunity to make a contribution to people's lives. And so it's a privileged position that I'm in. And honestly, let's just cut to the chase. Small life, small problems. Big life, big problems. No, that would be like I'm going to live in LA and then be annoyed because there's traffic. It's like, no, you're full well, you're going to be in LA, you're going to be dealt. That's the reality of it. And I understand that the reality of taking on a big project is that there's big, complex, chunky problems. Bigger opportunity is to live in that question of who do I need to become in order to elevate myself to the next level in order to meet this challenge. It's not the hill I'm going to die on. I'm doing ordained work. This is God's work. I'm in a partnership with the divine. I'm contributing to people. It's an absolute privilege. Get the heck out of bed and get on with it.
I love it. It's so many good things out there. I just I'm picturing you in bed just covering yourself and be like, okay, I'm just gonna give up. Such a funny picture, but it's true. Like you're probably laying there and you're like, well, if this is what giving up looks like, I don't really want this. This is boring. That's so true. I love that, you kind of talked about how because I'm experiencing that right now too, realizing that the level of growth that my business is going to reach is based on the level of problems that I'm going to be able to handle. So if exactly like big problems, big growth, small problems, probably smaller growth, right? And I just want to acknowledge you, Neil, because, you doing all of that, right? Like, I mean, I didn't know a lot of these stories that you're sharing. And you sharing that right now, it just makes me think if you had given up, like I wouldn't have Simply Music right now. I wouldn't have this wonderful tool that I could use, this process and this method that I could use that is impacting so many kids. And so just thank you for that because gosh, like I wouldn't know what life would be like without Simply Music. When President Roosevelt passed away in his sleep, they found a book under his pillow, proof that even in his final moments, he never stopped learning. That's what true leaders do. Leaders are readers. If you want to grow your mindset, sharpen your skills, and become a better leader, reading is essential. I've compiled my top book recommendations, books I've personally read and applied in both business and life. These books have transformed the way I think, lead, and live. So, are you ready to grow? Check out my book list at wildlywealthylifepodcast.com/mytools and grow 1% better every day. Think about the world your child will grow up in. Fast-paced, ever-changing, filled with challenges. But what if they had the mindset, courage, and the creativity to thrive no matter what? At Catskis & Company, we believe in shaping that future now with Brilliant Minds, Brave Hearts, our online immersive program for children where they learn leadership and a growth mindset through the magic of storytelling, movement, and music. There's a ton of leadership, mindset, and confidence training for adults. But why should your kids wait till they're adults to learn this? Your child needs these tools today before the world dictates who they should be. Imagine raising kids that know the power of their thoughts, the capacity to navigate emotions, and the courage to live boldly. With our Brilliant Minds, Brave Hearts program, they'll learn to stand strong in who they are no matter the noise around them. Join our priority list at catskis.com/priority to be the first to know when enrollment begins. Again, that's katzkeys.com/priority. I'll see you there. What I wanted to ask in that, because I have, for the listeners out there, especially for the parents, some of my students are very entrepreneurial. I can already see that they're creating products. They're selling it like on school fairs, and it's really fun to see that. What would your advice be to parents or educators or caregivers who are nurturing kids who have that entrepreneurial mindset, right? Or entrepreneurial spirit already coming up at such a young age? What would your advice be to them as to how would they nurture that in their child, and what type of leadership skills should they already introduce to their child or to their students who have that spirit of entrepreneurship?
That's a really great question. The thing about it, as I see it, is that creativity is king. There's an important distinction between creativity and creative capability. So if I can just draw that distinction for a moment. Creativity is the expression of creative capability. Creative capability is the machinery that determines how creative we can be.
Mhm.
And just let me draw an analogy to that. And if I just talk about performance, for example, if I'm walking down the street with Usain Bolt, who to this day still holds the record as the fastest person in the world.
Mm.
If we're both walking down the street together at the same, and we're walking, 4 miles an hour or whatever, our performance expression is exactly the same.
Mm.
But our performance capability is completely different. He has the capability for profoundly greater importance than I do. If I'm driving down the car and you're in a Lamborghini and I'm in a 1960 Volkswagen and we're both rolling down the street at 20 miles an hour, our performance expression is the same, but the performance capability of the Lamborghini is exponentially greater. Similarly, with regards to creativity, in order for anybody to deal with any situation, we need to see things differently. We need to think about things differently. We need to do things differently. And it's the seeing and the thinking and the doing things differently that I say is creativity. So anything that we can do, if you are on an entrepreneurial journey, you are going to have far more challenges than successes for the most part. And one of the greatest skills you can learn is how am I going to resolve the issues that I come up against? And that is going to require that you look at things differently, that you think about things differently, that you do things differently. And so from that point of view, I think the focus needs to be on what is it that we can do? Anything and everything we can do to help develop creative capability will give us the ability to be able to look at situations and see more potential solutions to the challenges that we're going to face. So anything we can do that helps to develop creative capability is really important for us to be able to explore and assimilate and absorb and take advantage of. One of the great things that I think, and one of the it's a privilege, but certainly very, very fortunate, we're learning something very new about music learning, about musicianship. We're learning that it has a very unique impact on the brain. And as we understand more about that impact, we've always known that it's a good thing. And in decades gone by, we've learned more about what we mean by a good thing with music learning, that, it helps with math scores and it helps with IQ. And, there are certain benefits that we've known about music. But what's happening now with our understanding is different. We're understanding now that learning music, more than listening to music, actually learning music provides the brain with this critical neurological nutrition. It changes the white matter structure of the brain. It actually changes the gray matter, grows the gray matter. It increases the connectivity in the brain. And from that point of view, as in doing that, the correlation is neural connectivity translates to increased creative capability. And increased creative capability translates to the ability to consider and think of more options, which is exactly what every forward-thinking, not just an entrepreneur, every person needs to be able to have a skill set, an enhanced and expanded skill set to be able to deal with any and all of the problems that we're going to face with in our lives. And our ability to deal with those situations has everything to do with creativity, and creativity has everything to do with creative capability, and creative capability has everything to do with neural connectivity. So as a parent, what can we do? We can focus on developing children's neural connectivity. Is there anything that we can do that enhances that? Lots of things. Because anytime the brain confronts something new and different, It actually requires that new neural pathways be established. And we've learned with neural plasticity that the brain will continue to alter and adjust. It'll create new neural pathways. It'll alter existing neural pathways in order to accommodate and deal with new situations and circumstances. So as a practice, there are so many simple things that we can do that will help develop neural connectivity. Anytime we do something different.
Yeah.
So what could that mean? Try eating different foods. It gives the sensory stimulation, new flavors to think about. The brain will have to adapt. Listen to different music that you're not familiar with. The brain will have to adapt. Learn a language that you can't speak. The brain will have to rewire, reconnect, create new neural pathways. There are games you can play. Sit down, with your children at a table and put an object in the table and say, 5 minutes, here's the game. You've got to write down every possible use that you can think of with this fork, and whoever's got the most unique answers wins the game. Okay, well, a fork could be used as an eating tool. Yeah, it could also be used to scratch my back. Well, that's true. I could use it as a spade to plant seeds in the garden. Well, that's true as well. I suppose I could use one of the sharp bits as a toothpick. Well, that's true as well. Now, as we're doing that, we're taking something that's practical and right in front of us, but we're forcing the brain to see it differently, think about it differently. New neural pathways impacting creative capability creates a more creative person, gives them the tools and skills to be able to deal with issues and problems in their life. So neural connectivity is key. Doing things differently is the key to get there. And fortunately, we've got this added bonus that musicianship impacts the brain so uniquely and so profoundly. We're seeing now, like that study that came out of the German Institute for Economic Research that showed that musicianship alters the brain and helps develop this capability more than twice as much as sports and other forms of art. I mean, it's amazing. And this is still an area of science that's in its infancy. And my prediction is we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Neil. That was really wonderful. With that, you're saying seeing things differently, right? And you earlier said you've had a lot of wipeouts. And how did you see things differently every time you had, a wipeout so that you can step out of that?
At the end of the day, it's the action that one is willing to take, right? And I consider that to be an act of free will. And when I say free will, what I mean by that is that sometimes we have to enter into an arrangement with our spirit and our body to do something that the mind doesn't want us to do. And so from that point of view, that often involves, okay, I said I would do this. I don't feel like doing this. At the end of the day, though, where am I going to direct my actions? Am I going to direct my actions in line with how I feel, or am I going to direct my actions in line with what it is that I'm being called to do?
Yeah.
Easy choices translate to a harder life. Harder choices translate to an easier life. Yeah. So in those situations, I've had situations where I've had to really, creatively think about how am I going to, I'll give you a scenario. We went through a financial wipeout, total wipeout. I have a memory of standing at our fridge with my 3 children there and opening the fridge, and there's absolutely no food in the fridge to feed my family. What am I going to do? You know what? I've got wedding jewelry that we could sell and actually get some money in order to be able to feed my children. So, I mean, it's not even the enormity of the problem that is the issue. It's more a matter of, can I look at anything and everything that will provide a potential solution? One of the things that I found quite amazingly, consistently over my lifetime, is that when I act in the face of difficult circumstances, I get more lucky. Opportunities show up. Now, there's a spiritual interpretation that some people would say, well, that's God lending a hand when you need it. There are others that would look at it from a more like an energetic point of view, like putting something out into the universe and the universe responds. I mean, at the end of the day, there's different languaging, but I tell you, regardless of what your languaging is and how you interpret that situation, I've seen it not only again and again in my life, but in the lives of people I'm around. And that is that the more committed in action they are towards what they're being called to do, the more that circumstances and situations seem to align to support what it is that people are.
Yeah, it's a universal principle.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just universal truths. Wow, that's amazing, Neil.
When you get to those points, it's amazing just seeing the rejuvenation of the hope when you take those steps, and then you have that, the favor, the coincidences, the return of however people interpret it. And it's such a big encouragement. When you made that first leap of coming to the US, you had that, like, just that extreme confidence that you were coming for a purpose. You had, just this will, as you said, to whatever is going to happen, you're going to make it work. Do you have a memory from your childhood of when that first was instilled with you? Like, when did you kind of start to feel that divine connection, and what were some of the signs for you that this is your calling?
That's also a good question. There's a couple of layers to that. I
Mhm.
always knew, I think I said this before, I always knew that I belonged to music, and I didn't even really understand when I was young what that meant. I just felt like if I had the place where I was situated, I felt most me if that was in music, like listening to music, playing music, thinking about music, having a desire to do music. That has never, ever not been with me. That feeling, that way of thinking has been with me for as long as I have a memory of thinking. But I didn't think of it as a calling. I was a kid. I didn't have the maturity to be able to see it that way. I don't think I really started to see it as a calling until early adulthood. And I came from a family, my parents were self-employed, successful business people, amazing people. I definitely won the parents' lotto, and born into a beautiful family. And I knew that I wanted to get into business at a young age. And my thinking had always been, I want to get into a business at a young age so I can do well enough and make enough money so I can then pursue music. The opportunities to have a very successful career in music are limited in Australia. Here, Australia is a country that's the same physical size as the United States. In the United States, we've got 350 million people driving an economy. In Australia, had at that time 15 or 18 million. So it's just not as big an opportunity casserole. And so from that point of view, it's like, well, I couldn't really see opportunities to pursue that would suffice what it was that I wanted to be able to do with my life. I'll tell you, I'll get into business, I'll do business, I'll get successful, I'll make enough money really young, I'll retire and do music. I still didn't even know what do music was. So my first venture in my early 20s into business was in the restaurant industry. I bought an established French restaurant and took that over, and that was an amazing experience to do that. And I was very successful, doubled the business within a year. The business was successful, but I was just unsatisfied. It's a weird thing to be successful financially, but really unsatisfied. Now, I didn't understand that. And I thought, well, what do I do? I need to get into another business. I, got another restaurant. And the same thing, I was able to build it up, increase the business, but not be satisfied. And I ended up getting out of it. We had 3 restaurants over a period of time, and I got out of that industry. There's a whole story about that, but I made a series of really bad financial decisions, and we went through a bankruptcy, just lost everything. In Australia, when you lose everything, you literally lose everything. And so I remember there was this particular day where, our home was being sold. In Australia, they'll often sell homes via public auction, and they put this big board up outside your home announcing that there's an auction coming up. And on the day, the auctioneer comes outside your house, and all the people gather in the street and they auction your home. There was this day where they were putting up the board to sell our home. The truck was there, came to take our cars. We were losing everything. And I remember I had this really extraordinary experience. 2 things. I actually saw my life as an equation. I thought, oh, wow, I've been pursuing business to earn money to do what I love. And it suddenly occurred to me as a broken equation. It's like, oh, I'm going to flip that whole equation around. I need to be doing what I love. And if there is such a thing as divine design, a pathway will reveal itself. What occurred to me was, wow, I'm losing everything I have, but I'm losing nothing of who I am. And I felt completely whole and complete. It's like, okay, from this day forward, I'm going to pursue music. It's like, this is what I'm meant to do. And I think probably that was the first time where I felt utterly, viscerally connected to my relationship to music as a spiritual calling.
Wow.
At the same point in time, I was broke. I've got a wife. I've got 3 children. How are we going to live? I mean, I'm committing myself to do this. And by the way, I mean, I've been playing music all of my life, but I'm not an advanced musician. I mean, if you're a total beginner and you hear me play, you'll probably think, wow, he's pretty good. If I compare myself to what I listen to, I'm not even in the ballpark. I don't consider myself, I'm not a performing artist. My strength is in composition and in education, but not in performance. And also my relationship to learning music was completely different there. I never learned how to read music when I was going through all those years of music lessons. I couldn't read. I didn't have theoretical knowledge. I wasn't that great a player. And here's me in my 30s with a wife and 3 children saying, hey guys, I'm going to do music as a career. It's like it made no logical sense through the lens of what people would consider to be responsible adult decision making. It was absolutely the right decision, even though I had no idea. So if anyone said, what's the plan? No plan. Or what are you going to do? No idea. How are you going to live? Don't know. How are you going to feed your family? Don't know. But you're going to commit yourself to music? Absolutely. Why? Because that is what I'm called to do. And then I had a miracle happen. A gentleman who I had met, but I didn't really know. His girlfriend at the time had worked with me, and I think I'd been of an assistance in her life, and he just rang out of the blue and said, I know you're going through a difficult time, and I'm in a really good financial position, and I'd like you to support you in your path moving forward, and provided a means of us financially being able to take care of the family and allow me to be able to begin music studying and start learning how to read and learning about music theory and, all of that process. And I discovered that I had the ability to teach and started teaching. There have been a whole series of miracles that occur, through this whole journey where things, and that was a significant one.
There's so much to unpack there, Neil. When you're saying that doesn't even look like a logical, smart decision. You just lost everything, and then you're gonna go into music, and you don't even know where to start with it, and it just didn't look logical at all. But the other thing that I wanted to kind of gather from that is, back then maybe we don't have a term for it, but now, they call it the imposter syndrome, right? Where you realize that it's not, you don't think you're an advanced player, you don't have strengths, and, you don't feel like you're a strong performer as a pianist. You didn't read notes, like all these things that, especially back then, when you think about a music teacher is someone who probably went to school for music and learned how to read music and would teach it the traditional way. Right? And even nowadays, a lot of people still have that thinking.
Absolutely. That's
And
still prevalent. That's the prevalent thing.
it's still prevalent. I mean, I see a lot of, people on Facebook groups talking about like, well, do they teach? And I actually had a very tangible experience of that. I had a student, and the mom was so stuck on like making sure that the student learns how to read first. And obviously with Simply Music, that's not what we do. So I just kind of stuck with what I do. And then I taught the child improvisation. And this was very early on. It was the first 4 lessons. And this child loved the improvisation, like enjoyed it so much. And he was getting so much value out of that and so much joy. And then at the end of the 4, trial lessons, the mom said, I really see that he's enjoying it. It's really awesome. He's never done anything like that before, but I really want him to read music first. So we're not going to continue with you, and I was like, okay, I mean, it is what it is. It's your choice.
Are you worried your child feels defeated when things don't go their way? Do they struggle to adapt in challenging situations? My free video training is here to help. Using the SMART learning method, blending storytelling, movement, and music, we engage your child's mind, body, and heart. Through uplifting stories, interactive activities, and joyful music, your child will learn to embrace challenges as opportunities for growth. For deeper insights on the SMART learning method, check out episode 4. Download your free video training today at catskis.com/mindset and help your child shift their perspective and thrive. Again, that's katzkeys.com/mindset. Spending time with family, creating unforgettable experiences, and seeing the world are all part of living a wildly wealthy life. And that life isn't just for the crazy rich folks. It's for anyone who knows how to travel smart. This ebook from Just Get Out of Town didn't just change how I travel, it transformed my life. Lee and I flew both our parents to Paris for $200 each in first class, while others paid $1,000 in economy. Our first class flight to Taipei, just $50. In our podcast, we talk about leadership skills and how a true leader never stops learning. Because I learned this way of traveling, we now take luxurious trips as a family for 80% less than what others pay. Go to wildlywealthylife.com/mytools to grab your copy today and start creating your own unforgettable memories around the world.
What would you kind of say or advice you would give to those people who they feel like they don't have the skills, like to pursue something that they love, or maybe they lack the quote unquote what people say would skills should be, right? Like the common societal norms that are like, oh, you need to be this to be able to teach that.
Yeah.
How would you encourage those people?
Well, we have a number of things on our side. I mean, as you know, Kat, in the world of Simply Music, given that this is such a non-traditional program, we deal with that all the time. You know, that we're in a culture where the what is most prevalent is the illusion that some people are musical and other people are not. Culturally, we think there are some people that are creative types and others are not. All human beings are profoundly creative. I mean, just look at what your brain does every night when you dream. I mean, it is astounding what the brain's capable of doing, and everyone's, carrying this device pre-installed. We're all profoundly musical, and, there's such a fine line between obvious and oblivious. And we are so musical, we are utterly oblivious to it. We're not conscious of the musicality that underscores walking and underscores talking and underscores gesture. And I know if I hung around any person who was absolutely convinced they're not musical, if I just spent a morning with them, I could drive them crazy with examples of things that they're doing that demonstrate a mastery of their musicality, and they're oblivious to it.
Yeah.
I could just see them getting to the stage an hour after an hour being like, I get it, I'm musical, I get it. Even so, culturally, people are oblivious to it. In fact, if I could only achieve one thing, if I had to choose only one thing that I could achieve with my life, if that could be that I could bring into human consciousness the fact that we are a profoundly musical species, that and in and of itself would have a global transformative impact, I believe. So, first thing is, if someone is not aware of that, it's just like, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. It's just that they're just not aware of it. They're well-meaning, but the reality of it is we're a profoundly musical species. Yet, so then history's on our side because we've been approaching music education a particular way for hundreds of years. And I'm of the view that the fundamental charter of music education is to equip the population with the ability to be musically self-expressed. And at some point in time, I think it's fair to say, okay, how are we doing after 300 years? Have we fulfilled our charter? And the reality of the matter is that only a tiny percentage of the population have really been able to acquire music and retain it as a lifelong companion. And I think it's time for us to look and say, hey, are we going about this the right way? Well, one way of doing that would be to ask the question, is there any other model that we could compare it to have a look and see how we're doing? And I think there is a very obvious model, and that is speaking. We speak. Speaking is just truncated singing. Okay, what's the model for imparting speech from one generation to the next? Well, it's left up to the parents. Have they studied speaking? No, they just speak. Do they understand the theory of speech? Well, no, they just speak. We know that if you just allow a child to be in an environment where there's speaking taking place, language will emerge. Why are we not doing that with music? Are we asking children to learn how to read and spell as a means of learning how to talk? No, that's preposterous. Why are we doing that with music? Why do we say music's a language but not treat it as a language?
Mhm.
When we're learning how to speak, we're not teaching children adverbs and adjectives and participles and pronouns. We're not teaching any of that. Why are we teaching theory in the early stages? Well, firstly, we learn how to speak, then we learn how to read and spell, and we learn grammar, and we learn nouns and adjectives and adverbs. All of that comes later on the foundation of performance. Why aren't we doing that with music?
Yeah.
And, well, because we believe that we should do it a particular way. Well, maybe that's valid if the goal is to create some highly advanced adult concert level performers. But that's not what we need. What the world needs now is to understand that musicianship provides the brain with critical neurological nutrition. We are facing a revolution in existence unlike anything that we have ever seen in the history of humanity. That being advanced technologies coming down the pipeline that will absolutely transform life on Earth and that will redefine what it means to be human. And it'll demand of us to completely rethink who and what we are. And this is going to happen very quickly over these next several years. We're going to have to really seriously adapt. And we have to look at what can we do to prepare ourselves and our children to not just function in the new future, but to flourish in the new future. And we're seeing that now that musicianship has this unique role to play in helping to develop a more creative brain. So we've got to look at, well, what can we do to get music into the hands of as many people as possible? We've tried this way for several hundred years, and it in and of itself, the way we are teaching creates a barrier of entry to immediately connecting to a musicianship. So let's treat it like language. Let's democratize it. Let's deformalize it. Let's move away from the theory and the math and the technique and the technicalities and the scales and the drills and the exercises. Let's just get people playing. And let's create a system that's designed to bring music to the masses. And just like we do language, and just as a parent would never question their ability to impart language to their children, the same thing can be true of musicianship. I can show an 8-year-old child how to play this simple song, and they can go right home and show their friend how to do it. And that friend can show their friend how to do it. And that is what I call democratization. But we not only need to revolutionize that method, but we also need to revolutionize accessibility, because if this method can only be taught by that highly trained, formally qualified person, then we've created a social barrier of entry. So we need to revolutionize the teaching process as well and say, listen, this is a skill set that you can learn adequately. Are you going to produce adult concert level pianists? Probably not. For the average person, if you haven't gone through that route yourself, it requires a very particular set of skills and understanding and knowledge, etc. But that's not what we need. What we need is something that's ideal to be able to get people connected and have them enjoy the sheer fun and absolute pleasure and all the emotional benefits and the psychological benefits. And you can get total beginners that are playing great sounding music being taught by relatively total beginners themselves. That's what the world needs. We need a democratization. We need to revolutionize both the method and who can teach the method.
Wow.
And that's going to require people being sort of evangelists about this, saying, look, what we've done has been great for traditional times, but we are far from traditional times. We're about to enter a new era, and we have a tool at our disposal that will really help us to flourish in the new future, and we have to disseminate this on a scale unlike anything that we've ever seen before. Revolutionize the method, revolutionize accessibility. Who wants to join that and be able to make an enormous contribution to helping to elevate the creative capability of humanity? I'm up for that.
So powerful.
It's awesome.
I just last night I was was it last night or the other night? But anyway, I was telling Lee, I'm like, babe, you can learn how to read rhythm. You know that, like right now, you'll learn how to read rhythm. So I just pulled up like one of the Masters of Rhythm exercise, and I told him, look, this is how you read it. And then I like have him like march it and then just put it in his body. And then like in literally like about 5-10 minutes, he was reading rhythm. I was like, did you know you could read rhythm? And he's like, no.
Right.
I was like, see, like you just read it. I'm like this, and I, Neil, right? Like I do this every week, but the magic and the profound wonder that I have for it doesn't go away. Every single time, I'm still like, wow, that was so cool. Every single time, I'm always like, that was the coolest thing, because it's not the way I learned. The way I learned was so difficult and so tedious, and I didn't have this experience of fun, learning, of course, I think I just naturally love music. So over time, I actually enjoyed it, but just the learning process was so difficult. And
Right.
this way, it's just been amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Neil, we're going to come to a close, I guess.
As maybe a final question, with everything that you've experienced, the training that you'll be able to put out and produce for kids, adults, humanity as a whole, being at the top of the game, top of the pile, and then all the way down to the bottom where people are taking your home and everything else away. From all of those different experiences, could you define what a wildly wealthy life is?
A few things. To experience being fully and freely self-expressed, to experience contributing to the quality of life of others on as large a scale as possible, to experience adventure and excitement and a lifestyle that's not thwarted by any form of insufficiency or constraint or disease. And most importantly, I think to be immersed in the experience of both loving and being loved.
That's amazing.
That's good. I love that last one.
Yeah. It's like precise, just boom, boom, boom. Love that, Neil.
Awesome. Well, Neil, thank you for your time. This was incredible. I'm so excited to share this. And I'm just so incredibly thankful that you took the time and I got to learn a couple more things about you. I feel like, Neil, every time I talk to you, I'm just really in wonder. Just in awe and wonder. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks for having me here today. And Kat, thanks for what it is that you contribute to others. And thanks for valuing music to such an extent that you're willing to commit and bring that level of commitment. I know how much you care about your students, and I see how continuously it moves you to tears, what it is that they experience. Even like right now, I've only got to mention it. I can see that it just brings them here.
Yeah.
And you got a man behind you that's committed to you being the biggest, brightest, best version of yourself.
And so we basically just pay for the hair to get dyed. That's if it could be bright, wonderful. Just kidding. I appreciate that, Neil. And Neil, just being in the background, just knowing the contributions that you've made already with your life, it's really inspiring. And it's also beautiful to see, because I think about, like, I see Kat, I see the impact that she has on the students that she connects with and everything. But then I think about the tens of thousands of instructors you've probably inspired in the course of your lifetime. And then that ripple effect. And, whenever you connect with that divine, hopefully, 50, 60, 70 years from now, but to see that ripple, that stone that you threw in the pond of life, and how far those waves really carried, it's going to be a beautiful, beautiful moment, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lee. I appreciate that.
Neil, where are a couple places people can find you and connect with you?
On social media, at the Neil Moore, and theneilmoore.com or simplymusic.com.
Beautiful.
Perfect.
Just want to make sure we give you a chance to shout
Thank
out.
you very much. Yeah, have people check out my TED Talk. That's
Yeah, I've shared that. I'm going to share it. I'm doing a whole round of email sequences, re-engaging my email list. And that's part of the thing that I already have in mind to share. I'm excited.
Thank you very much. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Awesome. Thank you, Neil.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Blessings to you guys.
All right, friends, that's a wrap on today's episode of Wildly Wealthy Life. We hope you're feeling fired up and ready to take on the world with your brilliant mind and brave heart.
If you love this episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. It helps us keep bringing you the good stuff.
And hey, while you're at it, drop us a rating or review. It takes 30 seconds, and it makes a huge difference for us.
Also, if you know someone who could use a little guidance on growth mindset, leadership, and creativity, share this episode with them. Sometimes that one conversation can spark up a whole new direction.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. Go out there, live wildly, be wealthy in all the ways that matter to you, and we'll catch you on the next one.